While everyone was enjoying their new items, Haruka celebrated by happily counting all his money. His celebration was interrupted by Tsuyuri, who approached to thank him for everything. She also thanked the noble knight accompanying him and asked Haruka to introduce him. Finally, Haruka introduced Angelica, clarifying that she was a trustworthy skeleton and the emperor of the dungeon. Upon hearing this, Tsuyuri asked if Haruka really used the pheromone ring on the dungeon emperor, as it was hard for her to believe. Haruka clarified nervously that he never actually got that ring and confessed that he used his subjugation skill instead. This immediately made Tsuyuri lose her composure, questioning why he would use such a skill on the dungeon emperor. Haruka became flustered by her cold stare, unsure of how to respond. With no answer from him, Tsuyuri gave up and decided to ask Angelica herself. Angelica seemed unbothered by the matter, so Tsuyuri quickly took her aside to talk, leaving Haruka alone. He wondered if Angelica would truly be okay on her own, given how solitary she had been. He hoped she could get along with everyone. Later, Angelica sat in front of the class, but an awkward silence filled the room. Shimasaki asked if Angelica was male, considering she was the dungeon emperor. Angelica simply shook her head to deny it, causing everyone to cheer with excitement, realizing she was a girl like them. They then asked about her age, and Angelica gestured with her hands to indicate she was 17, the same age as them. This news excited the girls even more, though their loud enthusiasm overwhelmed Angelica. Noticing her discomfort, Tsuyuri quickly took her hand to calm her down and asked her to share her story. Gradually, Angelica explained, using gestures, how she had been trapped in darkness at the deepest level of the dungeon until Haruka rescued her. Instead of letting her die, he broke the curse with his subjugation skill. Moved, the girls decided to support Angelica however they could. To help her relax, they took her to the baths. Tsuyuri tried to assist in removing Angelica's armor. Even though Angelica was a skeleton, Tsuyuri acknowledged that she was still a girl who would want to stay clean. However, as Angelica removed her sock, everyone froze in shock upon seeing her leg was normal flesh rather than bone. Despite their confusion, they continued removing her armor and were surprised to discover that Angelica was a flesh and blood girl after all. Meanwhile, Haruka, in his room, complained about not finding the pheromone ring he was looking for. Despite that, he had leveled up 6 times and improved many of his skills, even learning a useful transfer ability, though he couldn't use it yet. Reflecting on how he managed to stop the stampede with the help of his companions and Angelica, Haruka resolved to grow stronger to fight on his own. He decided to return to the forest. The next day, he met Tsuyuri, who seemed nervous about what she had discovered. She knew Haruka likely had no idea Angelica wasn't a skeleton, so she hesitated about whether to tell him the truth. Haruka mentioned he had things to do and asked if he could return to the forest. Tsuyuri agreed as long as he returned soon, since there likely wouldn't be another stampede for a while. Haruka happily agreed but also thought about Angelica. Although she seemed to be getting along with the girls, he felt uneasy leaving her alone in the village. He asked if Angelica wanted to go with him, and she quickly agreed, which alarmed Tsuyuri. She disliked the idea of them going alone to the forest and worried Haruka might discover the truth about Angelica. Without thinking, she stopped them but, after some consideration, realized her concern was unfounded and decided to let them go. She asked Haruka to be kind to Angelica. Confused but eager, Haruka left for the forest with Angelica. Once there, Haruka enjoyed being among the trees again. It was the perfect place to practice his transfer skill. He asked Angelica to keep up with him as he began moving quickly through the forest. Pleased with his progress, Haruka accidentally fell off a cliff but laughed it off, as he was used to falling. Angelica followed him but also slipped, inevitably falling. Haruka caught her, preventing injury but commented on how heavy she was for being just a skeleton, making Angelica feel embarrassed. Back home, Haruka enjoyed a relaxing bath and jokingly asked if Angelica wanted to join him. To his surprise, Angelica entered the bath wrapped in just a towel. Haruka panicked, confused about why there was a beautiful blonde girl in his bathroom. After finally calming down, he asked her if she was Angelica, and she shyly confirmed. Later, in his room, Haruka tried to talk with Angelica, but her shyness made him nervous. When asked if she could speak, Angelica gestured that she had been a skeleton for so long that she had lost her voice. Through gestures and other means, she explained her story. She revealed that the Dungeon Emperor had been a skeletal monster animated by spirit, but the silver armor restored her flesh, triggering a curse. The effects of a blessed bracelet then negated the curse, freeing her from the armor with the Jewel of Nigroman, which governs life, death, and the fortune of the Ring of Unlimited Luck. Haruka even regained the strength he had lost. This is how Angelica was brought back to life. Technically, Haruka did all of this, so Angelica has been helping him to show her gratitude. Despite this, Haruka feels he might be taking away her freedom in the process. Therefore, he tells Angelica that she is no longer a monster, that she can do whatever she wants, and that she doesn't have to stay with him since she is now free. Upon hearing this, Angelica begins to cry and immediately refuses, hugging him tightly. Haruka then realizes she has been alone for so long that the idea of being without someone terrifies her. Because of this, he decides it's okay for them to stay together for a while longer. Haruka wants to see her smile, so he tells her a funny story that makes her feel better until she eventually falls asleep. Sometime later, Haruka goes to the forest and asks Angelica to fight him with all her strength, as he is working on a new ability and wants to see how much he has improved in recent days. She happily agrees, and they head to an open field to prepare for battle. Haruka knows that Angelica is now free from the dungeon's darkness, and her levels have surely increased since the last time they fought. Even so, he plans to outmatch her speed using his transfer ability. When the battle begins, Haruka is astonished by Angelica's superhuman speed, but manages to narrowly dodge 3 consecutive attacks. However, his levels and stats are still low, and his weapons and abilities are among the worst. Despite this, he plans to become stronger. Haruka charges at Angelica with great speed, but she defeats him in a single blow, knocking him to the ground. She shows concern, but Haruka reassures her, commenting that he's starting to get the hang of his transfer ability. After so much exercise, they get hungry, so Haruka decides to catch some fish at the river to make a stew. Back at the house, he starts cooking with Angelica, teaching her everything he can about the kitchen. They enjoy a wonderful time together, eventually preparing a delicious-looking stew. After dinner, Angelica unexpectedly takes Haruka to the bedroom and asks him to sit beside her on the bed. When he does, she gives him a massage to thank him for everything. Haruka accepts, which makes her happy, though he quickly realizes she doesn't really know how to give a proper massage. Still, he decides not to mention it to avoid hurting her feelings, even though he ends up in some pain afterward. Once the massage ends, Angelica asks what else she can do for him. Haruka invites her to sit outside on a bench and watch the stars together. He uses this moment to get closer to her, gently stroking her head and thanking her for everything she has done. This simple gesture makes Angelica very nervous, and she pulls away, trying to say something but failing to find her voice. Haruka consoles her, assuring her that it's okay and that he understands what she wants to express. He suggests they return to the village the next day, assuring her that she doesn't need to worry because he'll be with her. This comforts Angelica, who smiles and continues to stay by his side as they gaze at the stars. The next day, as they head back to the village, it starts raining. Haruka takes Angelica's hand and they run toward the village together. After a long journey in the rain, they finally arrive, and the rain stops. The girls in the village are excited to see them and surround them instantly, noticing that Haruka is still holding Angelica's hand. Both of them quickly let go, clearly embarrassed. The girls crowd around Angelica, bombarding her with questions about her adventures. Fortunately, Toyuri steps in to provide a warm and calm welcome, unlike the others. Haruka thanks Toyuri, commenting that he will rely on her from now on. Toyuri smiles and teases him, saying he's not as lonely as he thought since he was holding hands with Angelica on what looked like a date. The others then surround Haruka, pestering him with questions about his relationship with Angelica. Haruka gets flustered and asks them to leave him alone, eventually managing to escape. Later, Angelica approaches him, but Haruka reassures her that she can keep chatting with the others. He decides to take a walk, but stops in shock when Angelica calls out to him, asking him to wait. For the first time, she speaks with her voice, though it is fragile and strained. She thanks him, then hides in embarrassment. Haruka smiles warmly and assures her that he heard her loud and clear. Angelica quickly returns to the other girls, who still have many questions for her. Haruka feels happy for her and reflects on what he has learned about this world. Every person has their own struggles, anxieties, and secrets. Everyone feels trapped and uncomfortable at times, but deep down, everyone also feels lonely. However, this loneliness doesn't mean they are truly alone. With this realization, Haruka decides to keep striving to master this world on his own.